Lesson 2, The Legend of Romulus and Remus, Speaking and Listening. The following are core vocabulary words that you will see and hear throughout this section of the reading. Alternative, another possible choice or action that can be made. Defy, to refuse, to obey. Fortress, a castle or fort, a structure that is very well protected. And tender, gentle and caring. Before we begin, I'm going to tell you what a legend is. A legend is a story about a person or an event from the past that is believed by many people to be true, but that cannot be proven to be absolutely true. Some events and people in legends may also be greatly exaggerated or described as larger or greater than they really were. Legends are stories that have been passed down orally or in writing and sometimes differ or offer an explanation of how something came to be. Early on a chilly spring morning, a man picked his way through the tall grass along a bank of the river Tiber. In his arms, he carried a large basket in which two infant brothers were bundled up in blankets. From the basket, the two infants could see the blue sky dotted with puffy clouds. They could hear the birds singing from the perches in the trees, and they could hear the rushing river Tiber, which at the time was full to the brim with the melted snow of the northern mountains. The twins were too young to understand that the man carrying them was a servant of their wicked uncle, King Amulius. Out of jealousy, or perhaps out of fear that one day the handsome twins would become too powerful and try to take his crown, the king had sent his servant to kill the baby boys. But the servant was a good man. He had a wife and two children of his own. With one look into those boys' eyes, the servant knew that he could never bring himself to kill them. The servant sat there in the grass on the river bank all morning, thinking about what he should do and knowing that the king would kill him if he ever discovered that he had failed to do what he asked him to do. Suddenly, above the sound of the rushing water, the servant heard a number of men on horses nearby. Peering through the weeds, he saw some of the king's soldiers. Perhaps they were just out on a routine patrol, or perhaps the king had sent them to make sure the dark deed had been done. Either way, the soldier would think it strange to find a man there with two babies in a basket, so the servant wasn't going to take any chances. Seeing no alternative, he placed the basket, babies and all, into the rushing waters of the river Tiber. He watched as they floated and bobbed slowly along the bank of the river. But a moment later, the basket was caught in the river current, and away it went, rocking and reeling out of sight downriver. The soldiers thought nothing of the man they saw standing there on the bank. They nodded and said good morning. The servant waved back and acted as though he was just undressing to take his morning bath. Little did they know how his heart raced because he had defied the king's orders. But he had also saved two young lives, and for that he felt happy. The twins remained calm and rather content as they floated downriver. Water splashed on them and soaked them, but thankfully the blanket did not sink. Eventually the basket wound its way into some tall, strong reeds, and there it sat. Some say it was the river god, Tiberius, who must have protected them and saved them, cradling their basket boat in his watery hands and gently guiding them to shore, where they fall asleep in the shade. It so happened that the she-wolf was having a drink of water there at the river. She saw the basket and its precious cargo. The she-wolf had a tender heart and took pity on them. The she-wolf dragged the basket to her den, and when the boys awoke, she fed them the same milk she fed her puppies. The twins remained in the den for days until finally the wolf saw a shepherd leading the flock of sheep down to the river. When the shepherd saw the she-wolf, he instinctively held up his staff to warn the wolf that he was ready to fight to save his sheep. But the wolf was not interested in his sheep on this day. Instead, She dragged the basket closer to the shepherd and then darted away. Puzzled, the shepherd went up to the basket, saw the handsome baby boys, and decided to take them home. What does this legend have to do with Rome, you ask? Well, these twin brothers were named Romulus and Remus, and they became quite famous. They were raised by the shepherd and they grew up to be shepherds themselves. When the boys grew older, they decided to find their home. When they found out that King Amulus had tried to have them killed, they got their revenge by fighting and overthrowing him. The legend of Romulus and Remus was very important to the ancient Romans and later to the history of the country of Italy. The fact that the she-wolf did not try to harm the boys, but instead saved them and took care of them like her own pups is a favorite part of the story. Ancient Romans decorated some of their buildings with statues and other types of artwork depicting this famous she-wolf and the twin brothers. At the time of Romulus and Remus, around 753 BCE, the area that is now Italy was broken up into lots of little kingdoms, with lots of kings who were constantly bickering or fighting with one another. Romulus and Remus had enough of those other kings, so they set off with some friends to build their own city near the river Tiber, where they had once been rescued by the she-wolf. Can you guess what the city was named? Perhaps it could have been named Reme after Remus, but that's not how the story goes. Instead, it was named Rome after Romulus. What happened to Remus? Well, Remus and Romulus could not agree on where exactly to build their city. They agreed that they needed to build it on a hill. There were 7 large hills in the area that is now Rome. Remus wanted to build the city on one hill, but Romulus wanted to build it on another hill. They bickered for a while and then decided to ask the gods for help. Each brother went to his preferred hilltop and waited for a sign from the gods. Late in the afternoon, Remus finally got the sign. 6 big vultures flew in a circle above his head. Surely, thought Remus, the gods have sent these birds as a sign that we should build a city over here. A few minutes later, Romulus saw not 6, but 12 vultures flying overhead as he waited on his chosen hilltop. Unfortunately, this is no way of settling the argument. Remus believed the gods had chosen his hill because they had sent the birds to him first. Romulus had seen more birds and therefore believed the sign where it was in his favor. The brothers could not agree, so they went their separate ways to see who could bring or build the best city. A few weeks later, Remus came to visit his brother. Romulus had been working hard all day and night with his friends to build his city into a strong fortress with tall walls. However, it takes a long time to build strong walls. Remus laughed as he stepped easily over the wall. Romulus had started to build. Well, it seems I've found a way into your grand city after all. That wasn't so difficult, Remus jeered, kicked a stone off the wall. This made Romulus very angry, and they started to fight. Forgetting they were brothers in those moments, they fought with all their might. After some time, Romulus fell to the ground and died. Remus fell to the ground and died. When Romulus realized what he had done, he cried because he did not intend to kill his brother. This is the legend of how the great city of Rome was founded. This legend is as sad as it may seem, is what many ancient Roman children may have been told as they were being tucked into bed at night. And this legend is still being told today in its various forms. Hadrian's Wall. The story ends with an important message for the Roman people. Romans will protect their beloved city of Rome. For protection, the Romans surrounded themselves by strong walls, not just in Rome, but everywhere they settled. This picture was taken in present-day England, hundreds of miles from the city of Rome. Here you can see the ruins of the Hadrian's Wall, a large wall built by Romans to guard against invaders from the north. Romulus's beloved city would become the capital of a very powerful empire. You will hear much about this memorable city and empire over the new few days.